our 184th week that I've wanted to do for so long. But what it did is it really took me an opportunity to find the right team to come on to have some fun talking about the decade of the 70s. Now, what's so interesting, oh, I'm sorry, all those gray hair, gray beard, old guys. I mean, what the hell we're doing
You're
here?
still looking.
Wait a minute. Hold it.
Wait,
What are you talking about, old guys?
I purposely dye it white. And
It's called natural highlights. Natural highlights.
I was actually doing some math, and I was realizing that I think 55 to 65 is the age group that should be here. And I don't want to know what your ages are. And it's not really that important. But we're here to talk about the decade of the 70s. And hopefully, if everybody comes on board in the right way, I'll do all the introductions. But the thought of what were we doing back then that were some of our biggest challenges? And what kind of tech was going on back then? Did we have any fun? Were we racing? Were we hot rodding? And then let me just share this other thing with you. Music groups, I don't know about you guys, but I've always said that the 70s was the greatest decade of music. Even, you had to have the 60s in order to get the 70s. But, and so I did some research. Groups that started in the 70s, Queen, Aerosmith, AC/DC, Eagles, Doobie Brothers, Styx, Foreigner, and I have more. But by the way, everyone, we're going to do an 80s, we're going to do a 90s, and we're going to do a Y2K. We're identical to this. Hey, we've got two great sponsors for the show of the Town Hall Academy. Shopware's contactless service is key to keeping your bays full while remaining 6 feet apart. We still have to do that. Shopware's completely digital workflow will wow your customers and keep profits up. Tara from Topol Service Center commented recently, "Thank God for this amazing cloud-based software during this difficult time. She can't imagine life without it right now. Thanks to Carolyn and hashtag Team Shopware. Book a demo at getshopware.com. And the great folks at Shop Marketing Pros. Does your social media truly represent your shop, or is it just plain vanilla generic posts? Well, it doesn't have to be that way. The experts at Shop Marketing Pros listen and create social content that connects you to your community on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. Everyone has submitted me their experiences from the 70s, and a couple of things that I saw there was the fun that you had putting headers on cars, but more importantly, what I saw repetitively, Bob, was the carburetor work that you guys did, and that you did so much of. And I know Mitch has a great story to tell about carburetors when we get his audio up. Bob, did you do any carburetor work?
Oh my God, every day. I bet you we probably did 3 to 6 carburetors a day, whether it was for our own customers or we had a lot of shops that just didn't want to deal with carburetors. So they would pull the carburetor off, bring it down to our shop, and we loved just doing that, like benching it. So yeah, we did a lot of that, and a lot of it was high performance work. We had 2 drag strips, one each direction from our shop, and so we did a lot of muscle cars and performance work. Always busy with that.
You've got some really great stories to tell about your shop, and you know what I failed to do is introduce everyone. Chris Chesney is with us, Senior Director, Customer Training, CarQuest Technical Institute, Advanced Professionals. Thanks for being here, You're not an old friend. You're not old by any means, Chris. I don't even know why. I don't even know why you're on the panel.
And I'm your friend. I have no clue. I'm only 39.
That's what I thought.
This is what the automotive industry does to you.
We all are 30 down.
Mitch Schneider is with us as soon as we get his audio worked out. Former shop owner, speaker, author of Misspire, What to Do When Things Aren't Running on All Cylinders. There's a pitch for the book, Mitch, right there. There you go. Got to read this book. Got to read that book. Maylan Newton's with us, business coach from ESI, the Educational Seminars Institute, and recently a new board member of California Skills USA Board.
Thank you, Carm.
Well, that's pretty cool. Bob Pulverenti. Bob, did you actually retire?
I did, August 1st.
Oh, dear. So I have to say this word, former executive director of the IGONC, the Independent Garage Owners of North Carolina. And I don't know why Jerry's here, because I don't think you're old enough to be here. The Auto Shop, Plano, Texas.
Carm, January 15th, we'll celebrate 40 years owning this company.
Okay.
I am 62 years old. I belong in this group. Are you kidding?
Yeah, you're qualified.
Definitely qualified. First of all, I'm going to take Maylan's advice, and I'm going to apologize. I'm going to apologize for whatever the heck comes up today.
I know I hear you. Maylan, you were Mitch's Snap-on guy for a while. Am I right?
That's correct. That's actually the first time I met Mitch is when I went into him as a brand new greenhorn Snap-on tool dealer.
Amazing. What a glorious, glamorous job. And they didn't teach you a thing, did they?
No. I mean, they put a field manager on your truck, and as I like to put it, and I'm going to apologize also, just like Jerry, they used the military method of F up, move up at that time. And we pulled into the driveway, and he hops off the truck. Remember, this is the first visit to Mitch's shop. And he says, I'm going to go across the street and have a cup of coffee. Good luck. And walked away. And it was like, okay. I mean, so when I got done with the stop and, introduced myself and just kind of on a wing and a prayer, I drove away and left him. I didn't go pick him up. He had to walk to find me at the next 3 or 4 stops because, he just abandoned me. And
you couldn't be talking about me.
No,
we got you, Mitch.
Hey, good morning, Mitch.
I'm really a nice guy. I mean, it's
it was him. Trust me, it was him. And
Did he buy anything?
Mitch? Oh, yes. Mitch had a Snap-on facility. I mean, what was interesting was a little side note is Mitch, his dad, and Jerry and his brother, I think, had the same toolbox. And I owned that same toolbox, and it was the old airport toolbox that had a tow bar on it. And this was before aircraft carriers. This was the biggest box you could buy. 13 drawers. Remember that, Mitch? And
Taco wagon.
Yeah, the taco wagon.
And I filled that sucker.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I think I spent probably 10 or 12 hours replacing drawer runners because there was so much weight in the drawers. But, it was customer service. That was the thing that I knew. And I had a great time. But, here's a sales organization that never taught me any sales. It was like, just show up, show them the shiny chrome, they'll buy it. And that's where the problem came a little later on when we start talking about the technology that evolved. They would ship you things to fix stuff, electronic ignition testers, and you'd open the box and it was like, well, I don't know how to use this. Just sell it. So you go into a shop and the guy goes, hey, that's cool. How's it work? I don't know. Figure it out for yourself. Well, by the way, give me $300. So it was an interesting time.
$20 a week forever.
Yeah.
$20 a week.
Well,
Maylan, when you were collecting those weekly debts from your customers, did you feel bad about the people spending mortgage money on tools?
No.
That's the one thing they taught.
It was my livelihood.
I was a tool dealer as well, Carm. I was a Snap-on dealer, and the motto, and Maylan will remember this, the motto was, he who dies with the most toys wins. They kept you broke and in debt so you'd go out and sell and collect.
Exactly. And that's what my field manager told me, buy things. And it's like, well, what about this? No, buy things because you'll get up and go out. And I remember a day I went out with a couple other Snap-on dealers, and we went out in the desert and we went shooting, and we were out there for 14 or 15 hours. And I got sun poisoning is actually what happened. And I couldn't go to work the next day. Guess who shows up on my doorstep wanting to know why the truck's not on the road? So it was like, you own your own business, but we're going to haunt you. But I learned a lot of good things. And you know what the best part about that is I met a lot of really great people. You know, I got to meet Mitch and his dad and his brothers, and you know, eventually Mitch's brother actually did all the machine work on our race car. And so, you know, you met a lot of good people. You know, it was a little frustrating sometimes, but and to be honest with you, the number of people that just handed you $20 was amazing. And I didn't worry about them. It was the people that were paying me $100 to $200 a week that it was like, how sustainable is this? Because in the 70s, that was a huge amount of money.
Mhm.
But we had a fair number of people that were making $100 a week payment on a tool truck, on multiple tool trucks.
Okay, and that's similar to today. I mean, it's still going on today, probably 4 times that amount.
I don't think I ever spent less than $200 a week.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about some great technology from the 70s. I mean, because the 70s was the decade of pure, unadulterated, come at you every day technology, right, guys? I'm only kidding.
One of the coolest things that I remember from the 70s, and now I'm really going to be showing my age, but Arthur Godfrey was on the television commercials, right, touting the Chrysler electronic ignition back in the early 70s, and he would be on there and he'd take a fire hose. Now, there's no way that guy could hold a fire hose when it blasted, but it blasted underneath the hood of the car, and he reached in and started it. And for all of us old guys that know points and condensers, that was the most amazing thing I had ever seen in my life. It's like, oh my God. And they touted, oh, NASA helped them to develop it. And that was what the actual commercial was, right? We took the space age technology and put it underneath the hood of your car, and you will never have to worry about having your car die because it rained. It's like, wow, that lit me up, right? I mean, that was one of the things that really just made me go, I want to learn about that technology, because we had the ignition module, if you would call it that, was actually bolted on the firewall, and it had like 5 wires to it. That was it. And it was just this little state of the art filled with epoxy on the back. And you're sitting there going, how'd they do this? You know, because I mean, we were dealing, hell, I'd set the points on a Ford. If you didn't have a feeler gauge, you used a matchbook cover. Right? Remember that, Mitch?
I do.
Oh my God, 18 thousandths of an inch. It was a matchbook cover.
I knew I was in trouble the first time a tech student was apprenticing at the shop, and I had to explain points in terms of transistorized ignition.
Oh my God.
We actually had an Allen distributor bench in our shop, so we would actually pull the distributor out and do it that way. And you know, if we wanted to change the advance on it or whatever, we would do a lot of that.
We had one.
Yep.
If it helped fix cars, whatever it was, we had it.
Yep.
Remember the big old Sun analyzer?
Yeah.
Had it.
Engine on
Oh,
it?
yeah.
Yeah. Remember the sales guy would come in? Our sales guy came in and said, this machine is so advanced, you could train a monkey to diagnose a car with it. I'm still waiting for that monkey. I don't know about anybody else, but the freaking machines keep getting more and more advanced, and we need smarter guys.
The Allen Smart Scope.
Yep.
Oh, right? Oh my God.
We had the first bare ace computerized ignition machine in California, outside of the Chevron station. And I had to wait for it for 2 years and fight for it. But that was out of the decade, so we won't talk about that.
But you had to have it, right?
Had to have
Oh, if it was technology, I had to have it. I was a real tech junkie. I think Maylan will tell you, it's what, if it helped fix the cars, I'd be on it like white on rice. I just
You know,
were any techs running away from the new electronic ignition and some of the new tech? I mean, every decade something came out and people would say, that's going to go away. I got to quit. I got to retire. Was it like that in the 70s?
Yeah. Yeah, the
I
older guys
remember-
would run.
Well, yeah, but I remember a guy, I don't know how old he was, and he was talking about this electronic ignition, this fancy electronic ignition. And I remember him saying, you know, I don't need to learn that. There'll always be points and condenser. And it wasn't very long till he was no longer around because it advanced pretty quickly.
Oh yeah, when Chrysler started in '71 with electronic ignition, General Motors followed in '73. Ford was right there in '73, and we've never looked back. Right? I mean, it's just been one more electronic, and that was the thing. So my dad started his shop in 1946 in the city of Detroit. I grew up in the business, and my dad and I were complete polar opposites. I was like Mitch. I had to have all the tech toys. I had to learn. I'm like, man, I gotta know. I gotta be able to stay up with this. And my dad, I went back to his shop in 1985, and I was really giving him a bit of grief because I said, "Pops, you know the phone. You're still going. Can't you at least get a new phone system for Christ's sake? You don't need that crap. It's just gonna break on you. This works forever."
Exactly.
Oh God.
Well,
That's great.
and I'm going to apologize, Mitch, but I have to tell a little story. So Mitch and Jerry, his father, would stop me and go, "Hey, we need this or we need that." And so I'd go out to the truck and get it and bring it in and give it to him. And then I had to go to Mitch Schneider to get paid for it. And she would, you know what I'm talking about, Mitch. She would yell at me because I was selling them tools. It was like, they have everything already. They don't need to buy anymore. Stop selling them stuff. And it put me in a bad position because do I tell a customer no? Or do I just not get paid for it?
I've got a picture of the two of them. I'm looking off to the side. I've got a picture of the two of them at the counter, and you don't have to apologize because that was really a nice trip back. And so people were terrified of her. They really were. My dad was scary as hell, but not even close to being compared to her. And
did she control the money, Mitch?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, you know, part of the kind of the difference in this time frame was we had people like the Schneiders who were cutting edge technology. I mean, everything. And then you had other people that wouldn't buy anything because they didn't understand it. They didn't want to invest in it. And then I had another guy in town that one day we had been talking about electronic wheel balancers. Big ticket item. Not a lot of people had them. You know, a lot of people still using a bubble balancer. For you young folks out there, Google that.
Maylan, we use the Bear static balancer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Inbound.
Every time I raise my hand, you'll see that I'm not lying. If they both took stars, I had it. We had 3 different balancers at one time.
Nice.
So I had talked to this guy about this newfangled electronic balancer thing, and it was $6,000, $7,000, $8,000. It was, pretty pricey. And he listens to me, and we talk about it, and I show him a picture of it, and he asks about availability, and that's the kind of thing it takes forever to sell one. And about 15 minutes, he walks back to the door of the truck, throws a piece of paper up onto my little toolbox desk, and says, "Let me know when it's in." And he wrote me a check for the entire cost of the wheel balancer and the tax. And it was like, what do I do now? Because we only talked about this for 5 minutes. But he was also a big technology guy. And his last name, Mitch might remember, his last name was Fox. He had the Shell station on like Sycamore and Cochran in town.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, you just said something. Shell station. I'll bet you guys pumped a lot of gas.
Amen.
I did.
Absolutely.
Chris, tell me about your
station.
Tell me about your gas jockey days.
Worked at an Amoco station in high school, and then worked at a Amoco station in college, and in a DX station truck stop in college, and a JCPenney tire center in college where we pumped gas. Yeah, I mean, all of that's true. That's kind of how we got into it. You just kind of fell into it. Been trying to. I tell people I've been in the business for 48 years. I've been trying to get out for 47.
It's like owning a boat.
And so I'm
It's kind of like
here.
a black hole.
Exactly. And for all the old guys, we got in it by happenstance or however we landed in it. And you look outside and you keep coming back, and you look outside and you keep coming back, because the one thing we all had, and probably still do, I'm sure I know I do, is an incurable passion for what we do. And that doesn't change. I mean, the stuff we're working on today changes, but our passion for learning how it works. I remember the first day I walked in as a Datsun tech in the late 70s at High Plains Datsun in Hays, Kansas. I'd been a tech during my college years, pulling wrenches for various companies, but my first big job as a Datsun technician. And we went to school. We flew an airplane, an over-the-wing Swearingen airplane from Hays to Wichita in a snowstorm. And we're going to Pratt, Kansas to do dealer training at a dealer in Pratt, Kansas. And when we landed in Wichita, we're landing in a crosswind, and I can look out the window of my airplane seat, and I can look straight down the runway. And it's going that way, and we're going that way. And we landed and drove to Pratt, and we stood in front of a pickup with a topper on it that he opened the side up and had a projector, an overhead projector in there, and he presented electronic fuel injection, L-Jetronic, on the 1977 Datsun 280Z. And I'm going, cool, this is fun. And so I've been a junkie ever since that point in time. We had a snap-on O-scope. Maylan, did you sell an O-scope as a dealer?
I don't believe so.
Mean, the CRT was about that big around, and there was a compression tester in it, and there was a gas analyzer, a 2-gas analyzer in it. But I mean, those are the things that we worked on back in those days, and it's the same today. The guys that are passionate about technology are passionate about technology, and those that aren't are trying to get out of the business.
Hey guys, Bob, can you hold that thought for a really quick sec? Thank you so much. It's your marketing company. Yes, it's your marketing company sharing the same vanilla social media posts. Are you just not looking really sharp out there? Well, that's not how Shop Marketing Pros does business. They believe each shop is unique with its own story. Contact them today on the web at shopmarketingpros.com. And now more than ever, you're focused on bringing cars through your bays safely and efficiently, and Shopware knows that. So Shopware's shop management system offers a completely contactless workflow. Your customers can review, approve, and even pay for the repairs right from their smartphone. Request a demo at getshopware.com. It's Bob, you were going to say.
Yeah, we had, back in the day, we had 2 mobile gas stations, and I think back in the 60s and 70s, I think almost every gas station had 2 or 3, if not 4 bays, and just where you went to go to get your cars repaired. And I know one of the numbers we always looked at was how many cars came across the pumps every day, because the higher the number of cars that come in for gasoline would be the higher number of cars we'd have in the bay, and it would drive shop dollars. So we were very dependent on, and today, you're looking at mostly social media and other ways to drive cars into your shop. But we really did it for the gas every day. We didn't care if we lost money on it. We just wanted the higher number of cars coming past our bays.
Mitch, you told me you won $100 bet once.
I did. And $100 was a lot more than it is today back then. I loved rebuilding carburetors. I thought carburetors were the coolest device that had ever been invented. I thought they were amazing. I thought that the fun you could have rejetting them and changing. And I became really rather expert at different kinds of carburetors, but I love quadrajets. A lot of people didn't, but I did. And I got really good at it, and somebody made a comment once, and Maylan will know that I have a behavioral problem anyway, and not quite right. And I said I could rebuild one of those blindfolded, and he said, "I bet you $100 you can." I said, "I'll take the bet." I didn't know. I mean, I don't know where I would have gotten $100 if anything happened, but realistically, I took it apart and put it together blindfolded, and learning how to field strip a carburetor really helped me when I had to do that with a rifle. But
could you do that now?
Now, I would try. I'm crazy enough to try.
Wait a minute. You just said field strip a rifle. I remember that.
Yep.
Oh my God. It was an M16.
Yep.
So,
blindfold.
Wow, how cool is that? Guys, can you imagine it being, we having the technology we have today and having seen the video of Mitch doing that? Who would have ever thought we should have, videoed that, but there was nothing to allow you to do that.
There's a gentleman named Bruce Caron who's a wonderful tech, but he's also a brilliant photographer. And every once in a while he sends pictures over Facebook, and he had this incredibly old brick building, out of the 30s for sure, maybe the 20s, and a big neon sign that he grabbed a picture of that said carburetor repairs. And it was like, yeah, right. And
but wasn't it back in the 70s that you were specialty shops were electric carburetor shops together? I believe many shops that were doing alternators and starters, they were rebuilding them from total scratch. They were also into carburetors, and I remember selling more high-grade Jiffy kits than ever, and I'm sure our generation today doesn't even know what that is.
Right.
How many of you know what a growler is?
Oh yes.
How many of you used it?
I still have one.
An armature cutter.
For the armature, yeah. Yep. We had one.
Well,
Mitch, when you were doing your quadrajets, did you seal the Welsh plugs?
Oh, yeah.
What did you seal it with? We used Marine Tex. We found that was the best stuff.
We used epoxy. I would take them apart. I would pop the caps out, put new caps in, and they eventually had kits that had rubber seals on them, but I still used the epoxy.
Yeah.
And you had to be careful because it wouldn't fit if you used too much epoxy.
Yep.
Yeah, we used epoxy also. Did a lot of choke pull-offs on the quadrajets and the 2 GCs.
How many people had a main well tube fall out? Learned how to diagnose what that was all about.
Well, one of the things that I remember is, I think it was Chris that said, we all have this, we like what we do. We have a passion for it. And I think, we talked about how old we all are, but mentally we're all 12 years old because we like the idea of how something works. I think what drove us was curiosity. And it was like, that's cool. How's that work? And I remember cutting open, you were talking about the electronic ignition module packed with epoxy, actually cutting that epoxy out to see what was inside it. And cutting things open and looking at things. I think the curiosity is what drove a lot of us. Is how does that work? That's cool. And we still have that curiosity.
My dad, may rest in peace, he saw everything in exploded diagrams. I mean, if he looked at something, he could see all of the pieces inside it just spread out everywhere and could put together how it was supposed to work. And rarely he would explain it. Most of the time he was pretty good Zen master. He would say, figure it out. And you had to figure it out. And I remember the first time I walked over to a car and I looked at it and I saw it. I just saw it in front of me. It was like a science fiction movie with all of the pieces out there. And it was like, yeah, I got this. I'm good.
Nice.
Matrix via the 70s.
Yes.
Right. It's really interesting. We're talking about all this stuff. And to the consumer, nothing has changed.
Right. Not
a thing. My car's broken. My car needs service. Here are the keys. You can't tell me how much it's going to cost. You can't tell me how long it's going to take to get it fixed. But here's my wallet. Be fair, right? And from the other side of it, the counter, the other side of the wrench, if you will, right? Everything has changed. You know, if you go back to a 1969 Chevy Impala and it has a tip in on acceleration, well, the diagnosis is simple, right? Got to rebuild the carburetor. Actually, rebuilding the carburetor is where it took skill. It took people that knew what the hell they were doing, or they would mess it up. Today, if you have a 2009 Chevy Impala and it has a tip in on acceleration, you have no idea. You better have someone know exactly what the heck, how to diagnose. But the actual replacement of it is simple, right? But the cost of all of these things has gone so out of the norm, and it's really difficult to try and get that across to some people. And it's because to them, nothing's changed. I'm still driving that car.
The manufacturers have worked really hard. They worked diligently to make sure that the customer could not see a difference in the vehicle. I mean, they went to digital dashes for an hour and a half, and they were done because people didn't like it. So you have an analog speedometer, or what appears to be an analog speedometer, in a vehicle that's totally digital. It doesn't make any sense, right?
That's right.
I mean, it wouldn't bother you or it wouldn't bother me, but it drives them nuts because they see digital as expensive.
That's why consumers push back on electric cars. They don't like change. They want to put a gas hose in the back, fill it up with a liquid that smells like gasoline, not diesel, and drive it the same way they always have and bring it to us for all the change. So
That's it.
Chris, I want to go to you, the Senior Director of Customer Training at CarQuest Advanced Professional. What were we doing for training back in the 70s? Now, I know you told the story about flying, but where were we getting our training?
Well, from a dealer perspective, I got a lot of training through the dealership. I didn't have a formal vocational education. My mom died when I was 5, and I grew up on a farm. And so I was on a tractor when I was 6, cutting silage with my dad. And so I was immersed in all things mechanical on the farm. I overhauled my first tractor when I was 12. It was a David Brown diesel tractor. I didn't have the sockets or the wrenches that fit the fasteners. So most of it was done with a crescent wrench or close enough, you know? And so my passion came from just, as Maylan said, that how things work. Can I get it put back together? And then got into racing. I still have the magazine cover of the magazine I saw when I was 7 years. Phil Hill sitting in a shark-nosed Ferrari Formula One car. And that's the moment that changed my life and pointed me towards the automotive industry. But I learned by doing. I raced, I drag raced. I did all my own mechanical work. I fixed things on the farm out in a wheat field at 110 degrees in the shade, you know, with the wind blowing. So I went to a dealership and went to formal training, either remotely like I described, or at High Plains Datsun, we'd go to Denver. They put me in a brand new 810 and I'd drive to Denver. And my in-laws lived out there, and I'd go to the training center, which is now where Lincoln Tech is, right next door to where Lincoln Tech is in Denver. And I'd go to a weeks-long training event. And that's where I got enamored with training. That really kind of was cool. So, you know, today we have so much training available. And back in those days, we had the old Sun Tune-Up Club. We had the champion spark plug guys that would come around. So you'd have those mobile guys that would travel around and do training, but not what we have available today. And obviously, we have to have more today because we have more technology.
Mitch, didn't you get some training from the GM Training Center?
Yeah, out in Burbank, California, for many, many, many years, there was a General Motors training center. It was the same center that the dealership organization sent their techs to, but it had an AC Delco division that was like, you know, off to the side. And they had a wonderful instructor, and can't remember his last name to save my life. His first name was Fred. And I remember thinking he was old then, And he was probably 20 years younger than I am now.
Yeah.
And,
Up in Buffalo here, Mark Apperman. That's a name I just want to throw out. He was the AC Delco guy attached to the
That's
GM
actually
training
where
center.
I would go there to the GM training center in Buffalo. That was about 2.5, 3 hours from where we lived in central New York, but it was the only thing available. We could go out to the GM training center out in Buffalo, Mark Apperman. We'd go out there for a week at a time, or we went to the, I think it was about 20 or 30 miles from us. Sun Electric had a training center, but other than that, training in central New York was basically non-existent. And in the 80s, our local association started bringing on some stuff. We started in the 80s seeing management training. There was nothing available. I know we brought Mitch up to Syracuse a couple of times, but until that point in time, nobody had ever even heard in central New York of shop management training. It was like, I got cars in the shop, there's money in the checkbook, I guess I'm good. But, it's a different world today.
Oh, yeah.
Shop management, KPIs, that didn't exist back then, did it?
Oh, no, not at all.
Now, people would teach you how to do a brake job. They wouldn't teach you how to charge for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
And nobody ever included the cost of the tools we've been talking about into the cost of the repair. That was just the cost of doing business. There was no return on investment that you actually figured into your daily operations.
So you got, I mean, what did you need a level of sophistication as a shop owner or CEO? You could literally make money just doing brake jobs, couldn't you? All day long.
Mm-hmm.
If you had them coming in all day long, yeah.
You could.
Brakes, shocks,
That's a
carburetors, constant. We
30,000
actually, in upstate New York, we actually had, in the 80s, we had Chubby Fredericks come a couple times, and this was back when Chubby was Chubby. There was no API. It was just Chubby. He would come and do a class and, do his deal. And, but he, today, I mean, how many hundreds of people that work for that organization? But yeah, we had him back in Syracuse when it was just him. But, we like back in the day when I had whether it would be a VAT 40 or Sun Electric or it'd be the 1215, 1115, we actually not only charged for all of our labor time we had, but back in the day, I charged actually a hookup fee for anything we did. So we would charge X amount of dollars to hook it to a VAT 40 or X amount of dollars to hook it to a 1215. And later, as we got into scan tools, we charged a scan tool hookup plus labor or diagnostics. So we weren't afraid to charge.
Thank you for all the comments here on Facebook. I opened the show talking about groups from the 70s. And I told you a few of them that started in the 70s. Well, here's a few more. Talking Heads, Blondie, Journey, Steely Dan, one of my favoriteest groups. Cheap Trick, Boston, Average White Band. Anyway, if those ring a bell or anything.
Can you still say that?
No.
What? Oh. Gee, Mitch, I just can't even believe you challenged my thought. So, did any of you guys do drag racing? Because that was a big thing.
Absolutely.
Everybody's answering at the same time. But how about we go around the room? Mitch, how about you? Drag racing?
The street racing count?
Sure.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We'd go to the track certainly, and you get a lot of experience at the track because you wind up, calluses were one thing, but when you go to the track and you needed to pull spark plugs out to see how they were burning, to see how to change the jets so that you can make a better run the next time, that was challenging. But there were I know people that had two identical. This is the truth. I know people that had two identical cars, one that they would drive to suck you into a race, and then another they'd show up with later on that night. And the only thing that was similar was the exterior, because there were like a 200 horsepower difference under the hood, and whatever it was they went home to get, they damn near had a trailer at back. Yeah. You remember Big Willie and the Street Racers on Venice Boulevard in LA? Oh yeah.
And he was big. He had a Superbird.
Yep. It's crazy, wasn't it?
Yeah, we constantly had drag cars running out of my shop. All the guys who worked for me had drag cars. lot of my customers had drag cars. We had a lot of muscle cars we worked on. One of the best cars I ever had was an AMX, and I remember we had an 8-mile drag strip just down the street from the shop, and we had 538s in the back end with a 264 low gear, and we would basically shift just off the line, and the front wheels would still be in the air. I mean, it was a great ride. But we had a lot of fun back in the day.
Yeah, you have to be just a couple of degrees off the bubble. And if you talk to technicians today about stuff like this, I wonder what the percentage is of kids that are working on cars today professionally that love the machine as much as we did and enjoyed. I always kid around about loving linear speed. It wasn't just that I like to go fast. I like to go fast.
Yeah.
I used to like to get there in a hurry. And I was crazy when I came to California. I was really self-destructive, so it didn't matter to me if I hurt myself. I mean, I was lucky enough so I never did. But and David, my brother, was a brilliant machinist, and he could make anything go faster. He just he wasn't quite right. I'm not sure he still is, but
we have to do something. Mitch wrote me and he said, yeah, I had a ton of fun in the 70s. In fact, I can't even talk about some of the fun that I had. And so maybe one day we have to do cocktails with Mitch, and get him just to loosen up and hear some of these stories that he will not tell us.
You need to prefix that with the names have been changed to protect the guilty.
yeah, no,
Do any drag racing, Chris?
A lot. Started in high school. Had a 66 Mercury Cyclone GT 390 horse or 335 horse 390. That got me started. I had two Boss Mustangs, a 302 and a 70 302 and a 71 351. A drag raced the 351. Built a Maverick Super Modified when they came out with Super Modified. If you remember, Super Stock Illustrated magazine came up with that 10-pound per cubic inch pro class car, and I'd tow it to Bristol, Tennessee,
Wow.
and would race on Thunder Valley back in the day when there was still a mound of mountain between the circle track and the drag strip, and the drag strip had a slight right turn through the lights that it was fun to watch the fuel cars go through because they would pull the chute and then try to steer the car to the right to keep it on the track. And moonshine was being brewed just up the hill from the pit.
It probably still is.
Yeah, probably still is. Absolutely. I had a guy come down and wanted to trade me a gallon of Shine for a 6-pack of Coors. I lived in Kansas, grew up in Kansas, but Kansas had Coors. You couldn't buy Coors any other state of Colorado or Kansas. For sure, you couldn't buy it east of the Mississippi. And I had a fifth-wheel trailer and would shove 6 cases of Coors in the nose of the enclosed fifth wheel with some dry ice, and I'd take it. I was a bootlegger, and I'd take it to in Florida to race IHRA, and I'd trade that stuff for money, sell it for $20 a 6-pack back in those days, back in the early 70s, and it'd pay my gas to get back and forth. So yeah, I drag raced a bit.
Bob, were you one of the first that got an ASE certification?
I don't know about one of the first, but early 74, 75, I had all of them. It was at the time it was NIASE and later become ASE, but
we were called double cogs.
Yeah, I had the master in ASE, I had the L1, I had machinist, I had heavy truck, I had school bus, I had auto body. I was one of them guys back in the day that I liked taking tests, and I could, even if I didn't know anything about it, I could usually logic it out, and so I could take a test and pass it.
And
I never did any work to speak of. So
you were telling me.
Anybody remember Chilton's Certified Automotive Repairman Society?
Oh wow! Yeah.
I still have the patch.
Well,
Mitch, you started the Service Technician Society, STS.
Federation of Automotive Qualified Technicians. Yes.
I still have a patch on one of my uniform shirts with that.
I love you. I'd kiss you if we weren't socially distanced.
Remember fact that you did, Mitch? FAQT.
Yeah.
That's
I
it.
got a certificate from
The
that.
thing that killed us was technology. It didn't exist.
Yeah.
If we had the technology then that we have today,
Oh my.
Oh,
we'd
yeah.
still have that association of qualified technicians. I'm sure of it.
Well, look at the training from, it was virtually non-existent in the 70s. And today, between the webinars and all of the great industry conferences that you have all over the country that not only deliver the good technical training, but management training. And just think of how much easier our jobs would have been in the 70s if we would have had that type of training available to us at that point. I mean, we basically had to figure a lot of this stuff out on our own.
This is an interesting question for Chris, really, but I think one of the only things that's saving the industry, because there's certainly a tremendous amount of shrinkage in the number of people that are out there, is the technology, because it's allowing a technician to do more work on more cars.
Oh yeah.
And I think
you're going to see a tremendous
more trouble
over the years. Technology is going to be commonplace in the next couple of years, where everything that you do as a technician and every system and piece of information and site that you serve, tech assist, anything of that nature is right on a tablet right in front of you. Everything. You won't walk to get anything. It'll be right here. That's happening now.
Do you remember when the term came out, at the point of repair? You want everything at the point of repair.
At the fender of the car. Yep.
Yes, that's it.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, one of the problems, I'm sorry, Carm. One of the problems we have is, let me put this politically correct, our aging workforce has a problem with some of the technology and keeping up with it. And we as an industry, I feel, are not attracting enough young people that like the technology. And I think that's going to be a big disconnect for us. I went and spoke at Oklahoma Tech. I spent a whole week speaking to schools, and I met a variety of amazing young men and women who want to come into our field, but nobody's letting them in because they're young, they don't have experience, they think differently than we do, and they do rely on electronics, and they're going to a 50-plus-year-old shop owner who's going, well, I don't have that stuff. And so, there's a big disconnect between the generation we need and them coming on board with us. I truly believe that. And I'll share a quick story with you. We had an MCA scope, and we had a guy at work for us, and his idea of diagnosing a car was to hook it up and do what MCA called the all systems test. You guys remember that? Mm-hmm. And basically, it did a whole systems check of the car. And when he got the printout, and it would be 20 pages long, he would recommend everything that the printout said. Everything. And if you ask him a question, why do you want to replace the coil? Because the computer says, yeah. And it was like, okay, I got to sell this to the customer, and you just wrote down 48 parts because the machine says so, but tell me why the machine said so. Well, I can't. It just needs to be done. I remember that and the conversations we had on a regular basis about you can't just run that test and recommend everything that's wrong with the car.
My dad discovered the 5 whys of Toyota long before Toyota had it. So every time I'd come to him and tell him a car needed something, he'd look at me and go, why? And I'd say, but I better have an answer. Otherwise it was like...
That's exactly what I used to say to my techs. They would come to me with a list of what the car needed, and I'd say, why? They'd have to explain it to me.
Yep. Same here.
Look at that.
There you go.
Hey, look at this, everyone. Here's my 2-year-old grandson, Donovan.
Car in a toolbox, Maylan, quick, jump on it.
Hey, buddy, how you doing? He came to see Grandpa today for lunch. Here you go. Thank you. Hey, guys, I had a crazy thought about manuals. We had, I believe, Chilton, but a neighbor of mine back in the day was a motor guy, was out selling motor manuals. What books were you getting your diagrams and your repair technique out of?
We got Chilton and Motor Age.
Yeah.
Both.
You had to have them both.
Yeah.
We did Mitchell, Chilton, and Motor Age.
Motor and Chilton, right?
Yeah.
Motor and Chilton.
Just like we had to have all data and Mitchell when we went electronic. No system has all the information.
Tony Mullen, who all of you know, I'm sure,
I
started
still
out
have
as
in the
at
cabinet
Chilton.
in the garage Motors manual from 1957.
Yeah.
And that thing is, I mean, it's worn out. And I tell my son all the time, don't touch that book. Don't touch it. That thing is an antique, But what was really interesting, I had a client in Northern California, and kind of goes back to the growler that Mitch brought up, I think, that it was called Electric Battery Station. And they started over 100 years ago, well over 100 years ago now, when they actually rebuilt batteries. The wooden box, they'd take a cell out, put one in.
Yep.
And they were a Willard battery dealer. And Willard Battery, the guy who developed Willard batteries, developed the starter, because at that point, cars were just using batteries for lights. And he wanted to sell more batteries, so he developed electric starter. Didn't patent it, gave it away. Because he just wanted to sell more batteries. But they have, and I don't remember the brand, they have an electrical diagram book. And it was probably a good 3 foot long and probably 60 pages. But each page was one car's entire electrical diagram. And it was pace arrow. I mean, all the cars from the 30s and the 40s. But their entire electrical system was on one fold-out page. And it was, you could actually trace the wire, because there wasn't that many wires. But I tried so hard to buy that book. I wanted that book for my collection, and he just would not part with it. But, you start looking at that, and you look at the wiring diagrams today, and you go, wow, we've come a long ways.
How many of you used tracing paper?
Oh, yeah.
Oh my God, yeah, for wiring diagrams. Absolutely.
Colored pencils and tracing paper.
Hey, hold that thought, everyone. I want to come back, and I have a final question for you all to challenge your thinking. The decade of the 70s. So glad you guys are here. This has been just phenomenal. Shopware wants to remind you to stop spending time chasing customers. Shopware's leading shop management system is helping shops like yours generate more profit per ticket with less time on the phone. Break away from your legacy system and implement a completely contactless workflow today. Get started at getshopware.com. Is your marketing company sharing the same vanilla social media posts that they do for every other shop? Well, that's not how Shop Marketing Pros does their business. They believe each shop is unique with its own story, and you know that about you. Contact them today, shopmarketingpros.com on the web. This was great. Thank you so much for getting this, if you will, legacied, locked down for future people to listen to and hear. I encourage some of our young people to take a trip through this memory lane with you all, and maybe we can share this thing and say, oh, those old timers, it was, I think my big takeaway is that you weren't afraid of technology. There wasn't a lot, but when it was there, it was, oh, I may see a glimpse of the future. And it seems like you guys had a ton of fun, but you learned along the way. So when you go to a car show today, and I know there's probably not a lot of car shows this year, but when you'd walk through a car show and you'd see the things you worked on or a car that you had, is that one of the greatest trip down memory lanes for each of you? I'd love each of you to give me the final word with that thought in your mind. Maylan, I'll start with you.
Well, it's kind of funny. I have a 30 Model A in my driveway right now that my son drove home with a blown small block in it that he's going to make a rat rod out of. And that's a lot of fun. But, I look back on the cars that most of these people have never seen. An Avante, Studebaker, Avante, McCurr, from Mercury. And you look at those cars and you go, I'm glad there's not more of them because they were a pain to work on. But to me, I am still just so thrilled by the mechanical part of this, I'm a big drag racer. I love going to the drag races and then just am in awe of the horsepower they're producing and how fast they're going. We had pro stock cars going like as fast as top fuelers were not too many years ago. But I go to these car shows and it's like, wow, that's a cool car. That's all it is. It's just a cool car. The technology is interesting. I'm still curious about how it all works. And that drives some of my passion. Even though it's driven towards, the management side of it, I still get that feeling in the pit of my stomach about these cool cars and the technology and what they did and how they changed and how difficult some of them were to work on, like a Citation, where you got to take the air conditioning out to change the distributor cap on it. And you look at some of the engineering that went into it and the rack and pinion steering, that was foreign for most of us for a while. And it's really not that tough a technology. But I'm just driven. I love cars. I'm a car guy deep inside. Cars, motorcycles. That's just this exciting to me. I don't care what it is, who made it, who worked on it, who designed it. It's just cool to me.
Thanks. Maylan, business coach, ESI Educational Seminars Institute. Thank you very much. Jerry Kezhaya, the Auto Shop, Plano, Texas. Your final words, my friend.
I'm in, I guess, everybody's camp, same camp as the rest of you folks here on this call. I'm a gearhead from Jump Street. I'll be looking at something on my computer and I'll mutter something like, wow, look at the curves on that. And my wife will say, what kind of car are you looking at? And she'll come over and sure as hell, I got a car on my screen, right? I just think cars are amazing. They never cease to amaze me. And I've been bitten by this since I was a kid. And I hope and pray that I get to carry this for a lot longer than the 60 years I've been pulling it. But there is nothing about a car that does not amaze me, other than how people abuse them and they continue to run. That's probably the biggest amazement that I see. People, it's just a fascinating piece of equipment that we get to play with, and we get to play with it on a daily basis. And I love that. So. Thanks for having us here.
Thanks, man. And you've been doing it for a few years now.
A few, yeah.
Chris Chesney, Senior Director, Customer Training, CTI, Advanced Professional. Chris, your final words.
Well, growing up in the Datsun world, that didn't last very long because the brand changed. But I worked on a lot of Z cars, a lot of Fairlady Roadsters, and put my hands on a lot of those vehicles. And over the last 10 years have been looking to try to find project cars and so forth. If you haven't paid attention in the last 18 months, the S30, the Z car, has exploded. And so now all these, and they were horrible bodies. They rusted out before your eyes. They were rusty coming off the transport. And people will take something that looks like just scrap metal, and now they'll spend the dollars on it. There was a vehicle, it was a special Z car in Japan last year that sold for over $300,000. It's not unusual to see bring a trailer Z cars sell between $50,000 and $100,000. And 18 months ago, you could buy the vehicle before it was restored for $500. And so that gives me a lot of joy that people appreciate the things that you were working on back in those days. And now that value is coming back. So I just enjoy watching those things happen.
Well, I'll tell you, this has been an incredible discussion that you've had today. And what's interesting is you all don't know each other, but you know each other, and that's almost like that fraternity thing that goes on because you've been around X amount of years, a whole bunch. Final words, Bob Pulverenti, former executive director, Independent Garage Owners, North Carolina. Bob.
There's a couple of things that I still really enjoy with cars. Is we have a group Route the South, Classic Gear Jammers, and they put on shows and basically manual shift stock, super stock 60s, 70s cars. Love watching them run still. And we also have another group here, Southeast Gassers, and they're basically 60s rules for gassers. And I just love going and watching them. And then on a whole different perspective, I like going to SEMA and seeing what all these really young, innovative builders do to these cars today, and just the technology that they pour into them. And you look at one of them and you just say, wow. I mean, these young guys are brilliant, what they do with a car today. But I love it all.
Thanks for being here, man. Mitch Schneider, author, Misfire. Got to read this, guys. Mitch's World. You have the final word here, bud.
No responsibility. I've always been fascinated by technology. We've been talking about it for the last hour. But what really fascinates me is that if you look back in the history of our industry and how blessed we are to participate in an industry like this, you'll see fuel injection in the 20s. You know, you'll see electric cars in 1904.
Right.
You know, all we've done is refined on a consistent theme and made it better, made it faster, made it safer, done all of these things. And I think it's just a joy that this has given all of us, you know, an opportunity to provide for our families and to give back to the industry. And I just wish that there were more people that were able to put the two together and give back as much as, you know, I always used to kid around and say, I got food to eat, clothes to wear, a place to sleep. And I've always got something that runs, you know, and I can always get somewhere, because now if I even look at a tool sideways, my wife just gives me the stink eye, because the first question the doctor asked me, and I'm going to end with this for anybody that's young or anybody that's watching this: wear gloves, wear glasses, wear steel-toed boots. Take this industry seriously. A lot of the stuff that we worked with in the 70s, the stuff that had a skull and crossbones on it, had a skull and crossbones on it for a reason. The first question the hematologist oncologist that I went to asked me was, did you ever work with any heavy metals, chemicals, solvents, or petrochemicals? First question.
Wow.
And, you know,
every day.
Every day.
Every day.
Every single day. So, you know, be grateful to be in this industry. It's a wonderful place to be. Be careful. Be mindful. And as hard as you try to figure out how to fix the car, make sure you take a little bit of time to make sure you fix your business if you're a business owner.
Wow. Thank you so much. And by the way, everyone who's on this show has done a podcast or 2 or 3 with me in the past. Please go to the website, key in their names, listen, smart people. And you know what? The decade of the 70s, thanks for putting a beautiful bow on it. Pay it forward. Have a great weekend, guys.